What happens when a young black boy steps up in the courtroom and exposes a corrupt cop for the world to see? Malik, an 11-year-old with the courage of a grown man, takes the stand in a case that could change his life forever. With everything on the line, he holds a piece of paper high, saying, "Judge, here is the proof of his crime." The courtroom falls silent as Malik reveals the shocking truth, sending shockwaves through the entire system. What will happen next? Stay with us to see how one boy's bravery uncovers a corruption scandal no one saw coming. April 15th, 2025, 10 a.m., District Court, USA. The clock ticked as the air in the courtroom grew thick with anticipation. A quiet tension filled the room, as today was not just another day in court. This case had become more than just a fight for justice. It was the beginning of something bigger, something that would shake the very foundations of the legal system. Malik, once an ordinary schoolboy, now stood at the center of it all. At just 11 years old, he had been thrust into a world of lies, deceit, and betrayal. His uncle, a man wrongly accused of a crime he didn't commit, had spent months trying to clear his name. But despite the mounting evidence of his innocence, the case against him seemed to be a lost cause. The prosecution was relentless, and the defense had no real answers. It was a web of lies that seemed impossible to untangle. But Malik had been paying attention. He had seen things others hadn't. He had listened when no one else would. It was through his sharp eye and unyielding courage that he had uncovered the shocking truth. As the trial progressed, Malik began to piece together the puzzle that everyone else had missed. The arresting officer, a man known for his tough approach to law enforcement, was not the hero he appeared to be. In fact, he had a dark secret that he was desperately trying to hide. The more Malik dug, the clearer it became. The officer had been responsible for fabricating the charges against his uncle. It wasn't just a case of mistaken identity. It was a case of corruption and abuse of power. Malik's heart raced as the day of reckoning approached. The final testimonies had been given, and the courtroom was on the edge of its seat, waiting for the judge's decision. The air was electric, crackling with the uncertainty of what was to come. Then, without warning, Malik stood up. He was small, his shoulders barely visible above the crowd of adults surrounding him. But as he stood, the room fell silent. No one expected what was about to happen next. With a piece of paper clutched tightly in his hand, Malik walked toward the front of the courtroom. His eyes locked onto the judge, who was watching him with an unreadable expression. Malik didn't hesitate. He raised his hand high, the paper shaking slightly in his grip. "Judge, here's the proof of his crime." Malik's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. The words echoed in the silent room. The judge's eyes widened in surprise, and the defense attorney stood up in confusion. The prosecutor, however, seemed to sense what was coming. Malik unfolded the paper slowly, his movements deliberate. The truth was about to be revealed. The room gasped as Malik revealed the damning evidence. The officer who had arrested Malik's uncle had not only lied about the charges, but he had been involved in criminal activities for years. The paper in Malik's hand was a confession, proof that the officer had been abusing his position for personal gain. It was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the moment that would change everything. The officer, once proud and confident, stood frozen, his face drained of color as the truth came crashing down around him. His lies had been exposed, his career shattered in an instant. The courtroom erupted in chaos as the judge called for order, but it was too late. Malik had done what no one else had the courage to do. He had brought the truth into the light. As the room began to settle, Malik stood tall, his heart still racing. He had taken a bold step, one that no one could have predicted. With just a piece of paper, he had uncovered a web of corruption that no one had been brave enough to expose. And as the gavel slammed down, signaling the end of the case, Malik's next move would be one that would change his life and the lives of those around him forever. Malik was not your typical 11-year-old boy. Growing up in a neighborhood where corruption, crime, and injustice were a part of daily life, he had developed an awareness of the flaws in the world around him. But even in the midst of the struggle, Malik had always carried a strong sense of justice, an instinct to protect what was right and expose the truth, no matter how painful. But Malik never expected that his sense of justice would be tested so soon, let alone on such a personal level. His uncle, a man who had always been a role model and a protector to him, had been arrested under mysterious circumstances. The charges seemed to come out of nowhere. Malik's family was torn between trusting the system and feeling betrayed by it. The more Malik thought about it, the more he sensed something was wrong. The arrest seemed staged, too convenient, too fabricated to be true. The officer involved, Officer Thompson, had a reputation for integrity in the community. He was known for being tough but fair, a man who upheld the law with honor. But Malik's sharp instincts told him there was more to the story than met the eye. As the trial progressed, Malik began to dig deeper into the events surrounding his uncle's arrest. He started noticing small inconsistencies, details that didn't quite add up. The timeline of his uncle's arrest didn't match the police reports, and the officer's behavior began to seem out of place. Malik felt an overwhelming urge to get to the bottom of it all. With a mind as sharp as any adult's, he began his own investigation. Every detail mattered. Every clue, no matter how small, could be the key to uncovering the truth. As the days passed, Malik's suspicions grew stronger. His uncle had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Officer Thompson had been there to arrest him. But Malik uncovered something far worse. The officer, whose reputation was untarnished by scandal, had been hiding a dark secret. Malik discovered evidence that proved Officer Thompson had been using his position to manipulate situations for personal gain. It was a pattern of behavior that stretched back years. Malik could feel the weight of the truth pressing on him. He knew he couldn't let it go unnoticed. He had to act. The trial had become more than just a fight for his uncle's freedom. It had become a fight for the truth. Malik watched as the case unfolded, the witnesses taking the stand, and the defense and prosecution making their arguments. But despite the passionate speeches and the claims of innocence, the court seemed to be failing his uncle. It was as if no one was seeing what Malik had uncovered, no one except him. Malik's family was divided. Some still believed in the system, hoping that justice would prevail, but Malik's instincts told him that if something wasn't done, an innocent man would be convicted, and the truth would remain buried. The courtroom drama was escalating, and Malik realized that the time had come for him to step forward. He could no longer sit in the shadows. His courage, his sharp mind, and his unwavering sense of justice told him that this was his moment. The truth was on the verge of being exposed. All it would take was one move, one moment of bravery to change everything. Malik knew that the consequences would be significant. He had no idea how his life would be affected by what he was about to do. But one thing was certain. He would not stand by and let corruption win. He would do whatever it took to ensure that the truth came to light. The stakes had never been higher, and the courtroom drama was about to reach its boiling point. Stay tuned. The shocking reveal is coming. The corruption will be exposed, and Malik's next move will change everything. The tension in the courtroom was suffocating. Malik had sat through days of testimony, the walls of lies closing in around him. His uncle's fate hung in the balance, and with each passing moment, Malik could feel the weight of the injustice pressing on him. The trial had become more than just a battle to clear his uncle's name. It had become a battle to expose the truth, no matter the cost. Malik's instincts told him that the time had come for him to act. As the trial continued, Malik's mind raced. He had been gathering evidence, piecing together the puzzle that no one else seemed to see. The officer responsible for his uncle's arrest, Officer Thompson, had been hiding something. The more Malik dug, the more he uncovered. It wasn't just that his uncle had been framed. It was that the system itself was broken. Officer Thompson, a man once praised for his integrity, had been living a double life. Malik had uncovered proof that the officer was involved in a web of corruption, and now it was time for the truth to come to light. Malik stood up, his heart pounding in his chest. The room seemed to freeze as all eyes turned toward him. The judge, the attorneys, the witnesses, all of them paused in stunned silence as the young boy made his move. With a piece of paper clutched tightly in his hand, Malik took a deep breath and stepped toward the front of the courtroom. His voice broke the silence. "Judge, here is the proof of his crime." His words were steady, though his heart raced. He held the paper high as though it were the key to unlocking the injustice that had been done. The courtroom watched in disbelief. The air was thick with tension. Officer Thompson's face twisted in anger. He rose from his seat, flustered. "What is this nonsense, boy? Sit down," he barked, his voice sharp with contempt. But Malik did not flinch. He stood tall, unwavering. "No!" Malik shot back, his voice ringing with conviction. "I have proof you planted evidence and framed my uncle. You're a liar." The words hung in the air, and the courtroom gasped. Officer Thompson's face turned red with fury. He had been caught. His lies, his manipulation, and his corruption were about to be exposed for all to see. The judge, struggling to maintain control of the courtroom, looked at Malik with a stern expression. "Young man, this is serious. You need to sit down," he said, his voice trying to regain order. But Malik did not back down. He held the piece of paper even higher, refusing to let the truth be silenced. With a flick of his wrist, Malik revealed the photograph, the shocking evidence that would change everything. The photograph showed Officer Thompson meeting with an unknown man, a notorious criminal known for bribing police officers. The image was damning. It showed Thompson accepting a bribe, his hand shaking as he took the money in exchange for his involvement in framing innocent people. The photo spoke volumes. Corruption, greed, betrayal. A stunned silence swept over the courtroom. The judge's jaw tightened, his eyes darting between the image in Malik's hand and the officer standing frozen at the front. The defense attorney stood speechless, unable to formulate a response. The prosecutor, too, was caught off guard by the magnitude of the evidence. The truth had come to light, and it was undeniable. Officer Thompson, now visibly shaken, took a step back. He knew he had been caught. His once pristine reputation was shattered, and his career was over. The lies he had carefully constructed for years had crumbled in an instant. And Malik, a young boy with a sense of justice far beyond his years, had made sure that the truth could not be hidden any longer. The courtroom remained in stunned silence, but Malik stood strong, his heart still pounding. His bravery had exposed the corruption that had long been hidden in the shadows. What would happen next? The trial was far from over, but one thing was certain. Malik's courage had changed the course of the case, and with it, the course of history. Stay tuned for the dramatic showdown. The truth has been revealed, and justice may finally be within reach. As the investigation into Officer Thompson's activities intensified, it became clear that Malik's revelations had only scratched the surface. What had begun as a case to clear his uncle's name was now a full-scale investigation into years of corruption and deceit. The case against Malik's uncle was dropped, and the focus shifted to Officer Thompson. His involvement in a web of criminal activities was now undeniable. But the deeper they dug, the darker the story became. Malik, along with his family, was thrust into a dangerous game. With the truth starting to emerge, threats loomed from every direction. Malik had never anticipated the dangers of exposing the corruption that ran so deep. But there was no turning back now. He had done what no one else had the courage to do, and the truth was out. However, Malik quickly realized that the fight was far from over. If anything, the stakes had only grown higher. Detective Ramirez, a seasoned officer with a reputation for solving the most complex cases, entered the scene. His involvement was crucial, as he uncovered even more chilling connections between Officer Thompson and organized crime syndicates. It was a revelation that sent shockwaves through the investigation. The web of lies Thompson had spun reached far beyond a single man's wrongdoing. It connected to a much larger criminal operation. As Ramirez dug deeper, it became clear that Thompson had been working with powerful forces outside the law, endangering lives for money and power. Malik and his family, already shaken by the exposure of Officer Thompson's corruption, found themselves in the middle of something much bigger than they could have ever imagined. The small neighborhood boy who had taken on a corrupt cop was now a part of an investigation that spanned across the city, and the consequences of that were beginning to show. The courtroom was buzzing as the news broke. Malik sat in the front row, his resolve as strong as ever. He was no longer just a boy seeking justice for his uncle. He was a symbol of courage, a reminder that even the smallest voice could create an earthquake of change. The moment had come for him to speak again. As the trial reached its high-stakes climax, Malik stood up in front of the courtroom. With unwavering resolve, he spoke out. "I knew something was wrong. I had to stand up and fight for my uncle. No one else would." The words rang out, echoing in the room, carrying the weight of everything that had led up to this moment. His voice, steady and unshaken, left no room for doubt. The courtroom was silent. His bravery had already exposed the corruption that had plagued the system, and now Malik was ready to finish what he had started. The stakes had never been higher, with Detective Ramirez's findings revealing a sprawling network of corruption and crime. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation for the explosive conclusion. What would happen to Officer Thompson? Would justice prevail? Stay tuned for the explosive conclusion. The truth is out, and the fight for justice is about to reach its dramatic peak. The fall of Officer Thompson was swift and inevitable. Once the investigation into his corruption reached its peak, there was no escaping the truth. Officer Thompson was arrested, and the full extent of his criminal activities was exposed for all to see. The community, once trusting and respectful of him, was now in shock. He had been the one they relied on to uphold the law, but instead, he had been using his position to tear down the very system he had sworn to protect. His involvement in framing innocent people, taking bribes, and covering up crimes was all laid bare. Malik's courage had made it possible to finally bring Thompson's reign of terror to an end. The case against Malik's uncle was dropped, and with it, the dark cloud that had hung over their family for so long finally lifted. The nightmare that had plagued them seemed to be over. They were free. Malik's family, though shaken and scarred by the events that had unfolded, could now begin to heal. It was a victory that came with a heavy price, but it was theirs nonetheless. Malik, on the other hand, became a hero in the eyes of many. His bravery and determination in the face of injustice made headlines across the city. He had done what no one else dared to do. He had stood up against a corrupt system and exposed the truth. His courage was an inspiration, not just to his family, but to the entire community. People rallied around him, offering their support and admiration. He had not only saved his uncle, but he had also delivered justice where it had seemed impossible. But for Malik, the journey didn't end there. As the recognition and praise poured in, he remained grounded, never losing sight of the reason he had fought so hard. It was never about fame or accolades. It was about doing what was right. He had done what others could not, and he had done it for the ones he loved. As the dust began to settle, Malik's family found a sense of peace they had longed for. The scars left by the trial would take time to heal, but they could finally look forward to a future free from fear. The nightmare they had been living was over, and they could finally breathe easy. Malik's heroism had changed their lives, but it had also left a mark on the community. His story was a reminder that justice could prevail even in the darkest of times. It was a story of bravery, resilience, and the unwavering belief that one voice could make a difference. Malik had stood up when no one else had the courage, and because of him, the truth had been revealed. What will Malik do next? The world is now his to conquer, and though he may not know what the future holds, one thing is certain. He will continue to fight for justice, no matter where it takes him. Stay tuned for the heartwarming conclusion. The fight for justice may be over, but Malik's journey has only just begun. The battle Malik had fought, the long days of courtroom drama, and the courage to stand against a corrupt system had all taken an emotional toll on him. He had carried the weight of the truth on his shoulders, never once faltering in his quest for justice. But now, with the case closed and his uncle freed, Malik couldn't help but reflect on the personal cost of it all. He had seen things no child should ever witness, and the scars of the fight would stay with him forever. Yet, as he stood outside the courtroom, a quiet sense of pride washed over him. Malik knew that what he had done mattered. He had exposed the truth when no one else could. He had taken a stand against corruption that had plagued the system for years. He had shown the world that even a young boy could make a difference. His actions had not only saved his uncle, but had also changed the lives of many others. His bravery had sparked a ripple effect, a new sense of hope in a community that had lost trust in the system. As Malik reflected on the events, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that the fight for justice wasn't over, not for him, not for anyone. There would always be more battles to fight, more wrongs to right, and Malik was ready. He had learned that standing up for what was right could change lives, and that even the smallest voice could create the loudest echo. Looking ahead to the future, Malik felt an overwhelming sense of hope. The world was full of challenges, but he now knew that courage and integrity could overcome even the darkest of times. His story was proof of that. He had become a symbol of what could happen when one person stood up for the truth, no matter the cost. He had broken free from the shadows of doubt and fear, and now he was walking toward a future full of possibility. Malik knew that the road ahead might not always be easy, but he was no longer afraid. The trials of the past had shaped him into someone strong, someone who would continue to fight for justice, no matter what. His journey was far from over, and with every step he took, he would carry with him the knowledge that his actions had made a lasting impact. As Malik looked toward the horizon, he understood one thing with clarity. The future was his to shape. The courage he had shown would inspire others to do the same, and in turn, that courage would continue to spread, one person at a time. For Malik, the fight for justice had sparked a new hope, a hope that would carry him forward for the rest of his life. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of courage and change. The world may be uncertain, but with courage and determination, anything is possible. Malik's life was forever changed after his brave actions in the courtroom. No longer just an ordinary schoolboy, he had become a beacon of hope for others. His courage had shattered expectations, proving that even the smallest voice could have the greatest impact. The community, once filled with doubt, now looked to Malik as a symbol of justice and truth. His fight for his uncle had not only freed his family from the nightmare they had lived through, but had sparked a larger movement, one that transcended the courtroom. The downfall of Officer Thompson had left the legal system in turmoil. The corruption he had hidden for so long had been exposed, and it became clear that the system was in desperate need of reform. Malik's actions had forced a reckoning with the flaws that had allowed such corruption to thrive. The legal system, shaken by the truth, began to implement changes to ensure that justice would no longer be manipulated for personal gain. Officer Thompson's arrest and the investigation that followed were just the beginning. The truth had been revealed, and it would not be forgotten. For Malik's family, the relief was immense. Though they would forever carry the scars of the ordeal, they could now breathe easier knowing that the truth was out and justice had been served. The nightmare they had lived through was over, but the emotional toll would take time to heal. They had been through the darkest of times, but now, with Malik's bravery, they had found the light. Malik, now hailed as a hero, reflected on the journey he had taken. He was proud of what he had accomplished, but he knew that his story was not just his own. His fight for justice had inspired countless others to stand up, to speak out against corruption and wrongdoing. Malik may have been young, but his actions had left a lasting impact, not just on his family, but on the community, and perhaps even the world. Looking ahead, Malik felt a sense of purpose unlike ever before. He knew that his journey was far from over. The world still needed more warriors for justice, more people who would stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. Malik was ready to continue that fight. His voice had been heard, and he was determined to ensure that it would never be silenced. The future stretched out before him, full of both challenges and opportunities. Malik knew that whatever lay ahead, he would face it with courage, integrity, and the same unwavering resolve that had carried him through the toughest of times. His legacy, built on the foundations of bravery and justice, would continue to inspire others for generations to come. Thank you for following Malik's journey. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of courage and change. Malik's story is a reminder that with courage, determination, and a belief in justice, anything is possible.